So the next person that's going to be testifying, most people know her, Ensler, who is a Tony Award-winning playwright, performer, and activist. She is the She's the award-winning author of the Vagina Monologues. Her plays have been performed on Broadway and produced for film on HBO. She's also the founder of V-Day, the global movement to end violence against women and girls, which has raised over $80 million. Eve has written numerous articles for Gizmore magazine, Huffington Post, and O magazine. She has won many awards, including a Guggenheim Fellowship in Playwright and an Obie Award. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, I'm very happy to be here tonight, and I just want to thank CODEPINK so much for organizing this tribunal. In thinking about tonight, I was revisiting so much of the beginning of the war and the beginning of the sanctions before the war. And I was thinking about how shock and awe released tributaries of trauma and destruction in every direction. I think the war in Iraq is one of, if not the most monstrous and illegal wars predicated on lies that no one has been held accountable for. And I think in terms of the karma of the United States and in terms of the darkness that this perpetuated on the world, unless we make peace with this, unless there is justice, unless there is ownership of these crimes, there is no way we can move forward. I think there's many things this war has wrought. For me, I remember literally marching in 4 different countries against this war: London, India, this country, and in Paris. There were millions and millions of people on the streets everywhere, and those people were ignored. I think it signaled to all those who had any fraction of belief left in democracy that our voices had no significance and the will of the people would have no impact on the military corporate oligarchy that was arranging that war. I think looking back, we see now it was one of the great tragedies of this century and how many things it has triggered. I want to talk a little bit about sexual violence because I think not only did the war itself wreak enormous violence on women in Iraq, but we know that ISIS was born, the groundwork was laid in the placenta of that war. And for years, we have supported Yanar Mohammed, who is the founder of the Organization of Women's Freedom in Iraq, and been with her on a daily, if not monthly basis, as she fights to support women who are being enslaved, raped, trafficked over borders. And I think that the escalation we have seen since ISIS of sexual violence and the forms of sexual violence and the hideous ways that women are being trafficked and abused and sold and treated as chattel has not only normalized violence in Iraq, but it's set a standard for the world where we've seen a rise of violence throughout the world. I think tonight, we have a team that's in northern Iraq, and they were there in the camp with Yazidi women, talking about the massacres, talking about the terrorism, talking about the sexual violence, and searching for justice and directions and receiving little. I think too, and I think it not only licensed a new level of sexual terrorism, but it has normalized that violence in so many places. It has destroyed the infrastructure of Iraq. It has destroyed precious archaeological sites. And it has obviously, if we look at Guantanamo and we look at Abu Ghraib, it has absolutely made torture and normalized torture, so much so that we have just elected a president who doesn't believe that waterboarding is severe enough punishment. I just want to say that it's catalyzed a deep xenophobia, Islamophobia, it's escalated racism and the militarization of our streets. And it's in terms of what's followed, the kind of uber security controls and surveillance, it's laid the groundwork for all of that. I think we all knew in our bodies and our beings, those of us, the millions of us who were on the streets, what the hideous outcome would be. And even though we marched and put our bodies on the line in so many ways, we were unable to impact the structure and the system escalating these wars. And I think we have to ask ourselves, what has that taught us? What has that taught us? Because right now, I think we're having a very similar sense and foreboding of what will happen in the time of Trump. And for me, I think the answer to that is that we have to go to any length necessary to find a way and to not normalize Trump, to work on every front before he gets in office to prevent him from giving an office. And we have to look and be willing to be braver and more resolute and more radical than we've ever been before. When I look back, there is not a day in my life that passes that I don't wonder, had I been braver, had I been bolder, had I been more outrageous, had I been more daring, had I been more willing to put my body on the line and go further, could we have prevented this war from happening? And I look at the Democrats now, the way they're normalizing Trump. I look at the media, the way they're normalizing Trump in the same way that they capitulated to the warmongers, to the liars, to the manipulators at that time. And we all have to be bold enough to arrest that now in this moment, so no more wars are perpetuated around the world and no more wars are perpetuated on our vulnerable people inside the United States.